California wildfires are burning hotter, faster, and longer. Our story today starts where smoke meets shackles. California's wildfire seasons are brutal. Millions of acres burned, billions in damage, and communities destroyed. But here's the twist. Some of the firefighters on the front lines are incarcerated individuals. And there's a bill in Sacramento that could change their futures. Welcome back to Beyond the Bill Number. I'm Stephen.
And I'm Sarah. Today, we're primarily talking about California AB 1380, a bill that might finally clear a path for incarcerated firefighters once they leave custody. We're also going to check out a couple other interesting bills along these same lines. But I really want to get into at the beginning, do you even have fires in the UK? I feel like I never hear about fires there. And maybe that's just because the ones here are so dominant in our coverage. But I was in Spain over the summer and there was a big fire outside of Madrid. And I was like, oh my gosh, there are fires outside of the United States. We don't have a monopoly on those.
No, absolutely not. Europe is burning, and Europe's been burning in a similar way to California for years now, because obviously lots of southern Europe in particular is extremely dry, but also you grow a lot of food there. There's a lot of vegetation that can potentially burn. But talking about the UK, well, one thing about the UK is that it's famously very soggy. So it rains a lot here. So traditionally, wildfires haven't been that big a problem. We've had a much bigger problem from flooding than wildfires, really. But that has changed in recent years because of climate change. So the climate change effect on the UK is that we will have warmer, drier summers, and we will have milder, wetter winters. So we have had a lot of flooding. Our winters tend now to be, our news is constant. It's a big flood here, there's a big flood there. But in the summer, it's about wildfires. And 2025 was a particularly bad year for that. And we've had a massive drought here. So again, a drought in the UK is not quite the same as a drought in, say, somewhere like Colorado or California, in that it's much less severe, but we just don't have the infrastructure for surviving droughts because we're not used to having them. So as soon as it stops raining for a few months, which it didn't really rain properly for about 5 or 6 months. And so things got really bad here over the summer. It has now started raining again, but it's going to take quite a long time to recover. But because of that, particularly over those summer months, we did have a record-breaking wildfire season in 2025. So we had over 113,000 acres that burned over the summer, which surpassed the previous annual record by more than 42,000 acres. So that was like, it's a big leap, really. Estimated to have cost about £460 million. Now, those numbers sound quite big, but in a moment, we're going to go on to talk about California. And obviously, the numbers there dwarf this. But obviously, England is a much smaller country, and this was England and Scotland largely. So it's a much smaller country. The effects are quite devastating, though. But one of the things that stops fires getting out of hand so much is that we don't really have any wilderness. Very little. So 75% of the land in Britain is farmed. You have another 15% or so that's the built environment and sort of towns and cities and things, leaving roughly about between 5 and 10% of the land that's for other stuff. A lot of that is like mountains and various other sort of uses and so on. So there's very little actual wilderness that can burn. And most of the stuff that does burn tends to be things like moors, the moorlands. So anyone who's been to England might have been up to the Yorkshire moors or various moorlands in sort of central Scotland and so on. So we do have quite large tracts of land that can potentially burn, and that's the sort of stuff that's burning in these wildfires. So quite devastating, but not the kind of, certainly not the loss of life and not the loss of property in particular that happened in California this year that was quite so devastating. It's quite rare that houses burn down as part of this. It tends to be quite isolated areas of moorland, which is devastating from an environmental point of view, but I think less so from actual people who live there.
It is crazy how much the last 5 years has really led to such a larger fire presence. In Colorado, we had this fire, I think it was in New Year's Eve of 2021, and they had stopped doing our brush clearing because of COVID, and this power line fell down and we had hurricane force winds, and literally overnight on New Year's Eve, or maybe the 29th, almost all of this suburb down here just was engulfed in flames. And it's a place where in Denver, you kind of feel like you're away from the fires because it's very developed. So what is there to burn except for structures? So it'd be kind of crazy to even have a fire start because there isn't the wilderness to come and get your structures kind of thing. And this fire just decimated this community. I think the fire
Yeah.
only burned for like 36 hours, but like 1,000 homes were burned, and one of my old ski coach's house was burned down, and the only thing left in his entire house was his squat rack. Nothing else. It was just a foundation and his squat rack. Well, if that isn't an advertisement for that squat rack,
Yeah.
I'm not sure what is.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was
Yeah.
crazy. And then we've been back up to Bend a few times over the last few years. And man, up there, it's just terrible. And the air quality that they live with, we were there just a few weeks ago, and it was 152, and they were like, it's a good day today. And I was like, I can't breathe.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh my
what are
God.
you doing?
I know. And we spoke about air pollution just yesterday, actually, and people don't quite recognize that how bad like wood smoke and
Yes.
natural smoke like that it really is for your lungs. In a lot of ways, it's worse than car exhaust
Oh,
and the
yeah.
furniture industry. Absolutely, really terrifying. If you have to put up with it for long periods of time,
Yes.
over and over again,
Yes.
that really is going to kill you. I mean, we've been looking at properties, possibly buying up in Colorado, in the north part of Colorado, and obviously when you look at house listings, they list the fire risk and also which is really useful. And the number of houses we looked at where it said the risk of fire is 100% in the next 5 years. So literally, at some point in the next 5 years, your house is going to burn down. Definitely,
Right.
we guarantee it.
Yep.
It's like, oh yeah, I'll buy that one then. It's
Just
like,
get
oh
a
my
flipper,
God.
and then you don't have to worry about the demolition costs. These places where these fires are so prominent are a lot of the places where people live because they love to be outside, they love the outdoors, and it's just it's a real catastrophe right now.
So, fire, big problem everywhere. If you believe in such things, then all down to climate change. But also it's climate change, but it's also the fact that there's a lot more people around. So we are living in places we didn't used to live in, which raises the risk. And also things like deforestation, clearing the fields, changing different agricultural practices, which make things more open and more likely to burn. All of that is increasing the risk. And the states that are in the US that are particular risk from this really need to come up with creative ways to actually stop things burning, but also to fight those fires more effectively when they do happen, because they will be happening. Okay, then. So having said all of that, and set the scene for how terrible it is that the country's on fire, how bad have California's wildfires been lately?
Well, they've been brutal, as we said. California's fire seasons have gone from essentially bad to apocalyptic in the last 5 years. So take 2020. It wasn't just the state's largest fire season on record, but it also gave us the very first giga fire in the August complex, which burned over 1 million acres across 7 counties. So that one was just an absolutely massive fire. And then that year, more than 4.3 million acres total went up in smoke. And that's actually about 4% of California's entire landmass.
That's a crazy amount of acres, because as I just said, in the UK, we had a really, really bad year, and our entire country was 103,000 acres compared to just that one state where you've got 4.3 million acres burning. That is a vast amount of land.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And 4% of California's land. California is one of our biggest states. That is a ton of land. Then in 2023, we caught a bit of a breather. Just over 333,000 acres were burned, which was essentially below the 5-year average, which just means how much of this state is burning every single year is crazy. That was a pretty short-lived reprieve, because by 2024, the number jumped back up to over 1 million acres and actually destroyed more than 1,700 structures.
Yes, and that's one of the big differences here, that fire no longer something that's just happens in the wilderness and you just see the smoke from a distance. It's consuming suburbs of major cities, and it's threatening sort of major cities now as well. But 2025 really was a special year, even over here. And I think in most countries around the world, the fires in California were headline news for a long time.
Yes, this year was absolutely brutal. I remember looking at the coverage from some of these fires this year, and the devastation, like you were saying, of people's homes and their lives going up in smoke. It's just a really different situation in California, particularly. Even in the fires in the Pacific Northwest, they're usually not that close to people's homes, and they're in the wilderness, because we do have so much wilderness here in the States.
Yeah.
This year, nearly 7,000 fires have burned so far, and this is, September numbers, which have torched over 525,000 acres. So not that 4 million number that we were looking at, but what's really crazy this year is over 16,500 structures have burned down, which is just an insane amount of houses from
Yeah.
these poor people. And a
Yeah.
lot of these structures burned in these two blazes that really stand out this year, which was this Palisades fire and the Eaton fire. And so the Palisades fire damaged around 1,000 buildings and destroyed nearly 6,900 more. And the Eaton fire completely wiped out a town and wiped out over 9,400 structures. Together, those fires alone claimed more than 30 lives, which is absolutely crazy, and left these communities looking like moonscapes. And when you add up the price tag of these two fires, it's absolutely staggering. They actually don't quite know where it's falling yet because it is still semi-new. There's a lot of insurance issues. Insurance companies are now trying not to cover people in California. It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
But it's falling somewhere between 76 and 131 billion in property and capital losses, with insurance bracing for over $45 billion of that. That's a billion. That is crazy.
Yes, a lot of
And
money.
behind every one of those numbers are families, neighborhoods, and entire towns that are needing to be reshaped by these fires.
Absolutely. And you can just imagine how difficult it is to get any kind of fire insurance cover
Oh
in
my
those
gosh,
kinds of
yes.
areas. Do you just gamble? I mean, do you just build your house, not have insurance, and just hope it doesn't burn down? Because if you don't have any insurance and your house burns down, what do you do? Who can afford
I
to
don't
rebuild a
know.
house?
Yes, it's so crazy to think about this. And I'm from the mountains in Colorado, and I always have dreamt of getting a cabin and being away from people again one day. I've lived my city life, but there's a lot of stuff in even my town that doesn't have a ton of fires that they're trying to do to help people maintain their insurance premiums, like cutting trees down around their house. And there's this thing
Yeah.
called firescaping now. And that's for people who are definitely in the wilderness. But the crazy thing about this Palisades and Eaton fire, and even the one that happened here a few years ago that I was talking about, is these are in the suburbs. Here, I would never think that I wouldn't be able to get home insurance for
Yeah.
a fire because I'm in the middle
Absolutely.
of the city. For my house to burn down, something has to go wrong. You
Yeah,
know, it's
really
not
bad.
like an act of Mother Nature. So it's we're in a really weird time for the insurance. I don't know how California is going to grapple with it, and especially this is one of our strongest economies. People love to live there. It's a really high quality of life.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they're gonna do.
Another issue to do with all of this that we're really talking about today is, of course, who fights these fires? Because in the past, when there were fewer fires, you needed fewer firefighters. But now there's so many fires, particularly somewhere like California. The sheer number of people you need out there fighting those fires to try and keep them under control is crazy. So, who is actually fighting these fires?
Well, in California particularly, they are throwing everything they can at these fires. So local departments, CAL FIRE, even crews from Canada and Mexico. I think I even saw a crew came from Greece this year. But one of the least recognized groups, especially before this year, are actually incarcerated firefighters, which is a really interesting thing that California does.
It is.
And about 3,500 people each year are in this thing that's called the Conservation Camp Program. And these are incarcerated individuals that are given leave from prison to hike steep terrain, fight fires for hours, and earn as little as $5.80 a day plus $1 an hour on the line, which is just like what, $10 a day to be putting your life on the line fighting these fires. Is literally
That's
crazy. And they save the states millions and hundreds of millions when you look at the labor costs and all of these other things. But when they're released, most of them can't even get hired as professional firefighters because of their records.
Yes, which I mean, when I first read about this bill, I was like, "That's crazy! You can't take people out of prison and throw them into fires effectively. It's like some sort of dystopian movie about using prisoners in these sort of terrible situations. But actually, when you think about it, when you look at it, it can be a really good thing because you're actually giving people a purpose back. But it only works if when they get out of prison, they're then able to pursue that and actually become firefighters. And it's a real paradox, isn't it? So you're
Yes.
good enough to protect the state during a gigafire when you're in prison, but you're not good enough to actually get a job afterwards doing what they've trained you to do while you're in prison. So I'm assuming then that these bills that we're looking at are starting to address this.
You would be right. And this year, I think there's a huge renewed interest in this issue, especially outside of California, because people were like, whoa, what the heck is this? This is crazy. But this actually began back in 2020 with this bill, AB 2147, that was championed by Assemblywoman Eloise Gomez Reyes. And that law laid out that incarcerated firefighters could petition courts to expunge their convictions once released. And the idea behind this was if you risk your life protecting communities, your record shouldn't automatically disqualify you from these public service jobs.
That sounds very promising, but I'm presuming there were some limits on it.
Yeah, it definitely helped the situation, but it wasn't a golden ticket. The expungement process is really costly and complicated, and even if you clear your record, you still don't have the official certifications that CAL FIRE requires. So a lot of veterans of fire camps were still shut out on this.
Okay, so not ideal then, but this brings us to the new bills of 2025. So let's start with AB 247, the Firefighting Freedom Bill. What does it do?
Well, other than having a very nice little name, AB 247 is co-authored by Senator Lola Smallword Cuevas and Assemblymember Isaac Bryan. And this tackles pay and benefits. And so, like I said earlier, $5.80 a day plus $1 on the line, $10 a day to be literally putting your life on the line is crazy. And it's kind of amazing because that's actually one of the higher paying jobs that you can get while you're in prison, which brings the whole prison labor camps and the whole thing when that's not what we know. But this bill does require that wages are raised for these people that are a little bit closer to the seasonal CAL FIRE rates and adds protections like workers' comp, retirement contributions, and health coverage, which, you know, with these people breathing in the smoke, fighting these fires, we know this is a dangerous job that puts you physically in danger, that the health insurance piece of this is definitely not there. But basically the idea of this bill is if you're risking your life, you deserve more than cafeteria money.
Yes, that sort of sounds very, very sensible, doesn't it? And particularly the health insurance. I hadn't really thought about that. But obviously, if you're a firefighter, you want to know that you've got really good health coverage because you're the chances of you getting hurt while you're doing this job, obviously, much higher than for most other jobs. So did it pass?
It did. It passed the legislature in September. So we're still waiting for the governor's pen, but I think there's a lot of positive vibes behind this one. It's just going to be costly for the state.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I can certainly understand why the governor would be scrutinizing it very carefully and would want to look at all the numbers before he signs off on it, because he's, to make sure they've got the budget for it. But it certainly does seem a very worthy bill. So let's hope that he gets his pen out. Okay, so now to the headliner bill then, AB 1380. So walk us through this one.
Yeah, so this one, there's been a lot of news coverage about. There's this one amazing firefighter that's kind of touring around where he was incarcerated. Now he's a fire chief. And this bill really comes down to a lot of the issues of this program and what's going on here, and really believing that people can have a second chance while we're also kind of using them in a place where they're at a disadvantage and getting to really, invest in people. So AB 1380 is all about turning fire camp service into a career pipeline. And like we said, there's more fires. We need more firefighters. This honestly should be a no-brainer. And it's in three big parts. So there is the first part, which is certification before release. So if you finish the CAL FIRE training on the inside, you get the official documentation for Firefighter 1 jobs on the outside. Then there's hiring preference. So if passed, this would start in 2027, that formerly incarcerated firefighters get a leg up in CAL FIRE's applicant pool. They've already served. They already know what they're doing, which makes sense. They're overqualified compared to a new person that is trying to create this career. And then there's the oversight and reporting piece of this. So CAL FIRE and the CDCR, or California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, will track hiring outcomes and report back to the state legislature.
Yeah, so this then, it goes beyond just clearing the record or just providing a bit of extra cash. It's about creating this direct route from prison, where you've got a lot of people who have poor job prospects when they get out, to this very rewarding and I would hope quite well paid job. So it seems like a complete no-brainer, as you say.
Right, exactly. And advocates say that this really strengthens the workforce, it reduces recidivism, and it fills these firefighter shortages, which which I think that's kind of the last piece here. I think a lot of this actually comes with these first two pieces, that this is a crazy thing to be doing to people, and then also not giving them the opportunity to have this career afterwards. It's a very bad juxtaposition for the state, especially one that is known for liberal values. And then also there's a huge amount of firefighter shortages, and we need more firefighters. So it really should be a no-brainer, and it
really
has bipartisan
is.
support. So right now it's parked in the State Senate Appropriations Committee in a suspense file.
That's if anyone understands anything about California legislation, knows that's not a good thing. But I can absolutely see why an appropriations committee wouldn't like this, because it must be a hugely expensive thing to do. But at the same time, as we say, it's needed, isn't it? And so a state like California that's on fire every year, this is basically where it needs to be spending its money. So let's hope that the senators can take another look at this. So let's just talk winners and losers then. So who benefits if AB 1380 passes?
Number one, the state gets more firefighters, which they need. That also means that communities get safer, and also incarcerated individuals who have already proven themselves get a fair shot at careers. And critics, they worry about the cost and whether CAL FIRE can handle a bigger applicant pool and these other types of things. But the upside is pretty clear. The talent is already training and ready. We just need to get a process where we can use it.
Yes, absolutely. And people may be concerned about felons effectively going out to fight fires and be wandering around these communities. But the point about this, and the beauty, is that these have already been tested. They've already proven that they can do the job, and that they're out there and that they're doing a good job before you take them on. It's just like the best way of employing somebody is obviously employing somebody who's already been doing the job, so you know they're good at it. And this is exactly it, isn't it?
And the felons are already fighting the fires, so it's not like when somebody comes to your house and your house is going to burn down, you're like, are you a felon or not a felon? That's gonna, that's not how this works. So they're already doing it, so why not give them the chance to do it after they're out?
Yeah, absolutely, and stop them reoffending, which is added bonus, isn't it? Absolutely. So zooming out then, AB 2147 expunged records, AB 247 fixed the pay, and AB 1380 builds this pipeline of taking people from prison into actually becoming firefighters. So what's the bigger takeaway here?
Yeah, I mean, the bigger picture here is California is rethinking rehabilitation and wildfire response. Instead of treating fire camp as cheap labor, lawmakers are starting to see it as a workforce development program. And that shift is about justice, yes, but it's also about public safety and resilience as these wildfires are getting worse.
Okay, so final thoughts?
California's wildfires are not slowing down anytime soon, and knock on all the wood that we can for the good luck and all of that, but that's not the way that this society and our earth is moving. So we need every trained firefighter we can get, and AB 1380 could really turn a revolving door into a career ladder. The only question is whether lawmakers will actually clear that path.
Okay, so the next time you see a headline about California's fires, just remember the real story might be hiding beyond the bill number.
Thanks for listening, and you can read the full blog and track these bills at billtrack50.com. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share Beyond the Bill Number, where we keep it factual, funny, and just a little bit fiery.
Catch you next time.